techniques, what were practiced by the old colonial powers. And on top of it, there are internal issues. There are different political masters. In the last survey, they said 22 countries have dictatorship. And the leaders have been there for decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, and some of them went off, but there are new ones which are coming up. And for various reasons, the Western countries have been influencing the change of governments and things like that. I'm not going into all of that. And then, unfortunately, all these things, the delays, the differences, everything is bringing one important point. And I'm sure some of you would have faced this situation. When we have a difficulty, when we want to go to the legal system for remedying, you will never get justice. It will take years by the time the institution is sure to go down the hill, and then it will virtually get closed. So the archaic legal system is also a very big deterrent for any institute. However, because of the population and demographic dividend what we have in Africa, Africa is the fastest growing continent in terms of total number of education institutions and total number of DER coming out and things like that. So it very, very positive in terms of possibilities. And for this reason, the last time Association of African Universities has run a very good webinar, 2014, with Peter Okubuloka from Nigeria, who had anchored this webinar as well. And also he has very carefully compiled 5, it was a good elaboration. The proceedings are still available in the web for one to see. I've got a copy, slightly add on, because I want to bring in this post-COVID situation, because every one of us are concerned about it. So what is a different approach that we should have? Because the colleges are not allowed to function. They are shut off. Students are rattled. Parents are very, very, unhappy, and then they feel very dangerous to send their wards to the colleges and universities. There's a big confusion, because you cannot ask every education institution to tomorrow to go online or run the examinations online and stuff like that. It requires time and effort and then concentration, and the faculty should also be ready to assimilate such changes. So pre-COVID times and post-COVID times, these are like in the history, prior to Industrial Revolution, post-Industrial Revolution, something like that. Here also, I have got a few things lined up, depending on the time available, because Felicia has given me 10 minutes, out of which already 7 minutes have gone. In terms of every activity should be commercialized in educational campus. That is a whole stress point out here. Every activity. It's no more, you cannot do that, you cannot do this. Because even it is taking money from the public in terms of separating out the profit generating activities and then go for public issue of capital. So they are running part of it as a commercial enterprise, part of it as a regular, was very vocal in saying it is the best if somebody can give education completely free of cost. That is the ideal situation. Anybody who wants to educate himself, like Coursera, for instance, or Upgrad, or any other institution where you can learn anything whatever you want to learn. But at the same time, if you want to get a qualification, then you have to write an examination for which they will charge a fee. So there are different models which have evolved in these times. So there are many, many activities. Everything must be commercialized. That is what I have tried to describe out here, and including the online program, survival, profitability, and growth. We have to take note. By default, all the African institutions have been forced to get onto the examination, whether it is for delivering documents, whether it is for giving tuition, whether it is for anything. So now every education institution has to go onto this online platform. So that being the case, what is happening is we have to start online programs in every education institution for not only our own students, but also for attracting students from elsewhere. So that is my final message. And if there is time for any questions, I will be very glad to answer. Otherwise, in these slides, I'm sure AAU will distribute to all the participants. You can find my email address out of that, and then you can reach out to me anytime. I'm available, depending on the severity of the situation. I can even answer queries even if it is the middle of my night. No problem. Thank you very much, AAU and Felicia, for giving me this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Prof, for staying within the time. I know that there is a lot more content that you would have loved to give to us. So what we will do is that we will share the presentation as well as include your contact so that when participants have anything to ask, they can link up with you directly. Thank you so much for
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So now we'll move on to the next section, and that would be for my colleague Dufie to introduce the keynote speaker for today. But before she does that, I would just like to encourage all of us to put our notes, our messages, our questions, and everything that we may have during the presentation in the chat box. Please let's utilize it. I've already seen that people have started introducing themselves. Let me just try to go through. I see Mrs. Nana Noel from University Institute of Gulf of Guinea based in Cameroon, Douala. And I also see Professor Onwunari Abraham, Georgewell, University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. I see Ima Ntangwa, forgive me for the name if I'm not pronouncing it well. And he or she is a senior lecturer from the University of Namibia. Welcome to all of you. I see Nkosi Tuonwana from Cape Peninsula University in South Africa, and a lot more of other people have joined. Thank you all so much for joining. I see greetings to all from Sri Lanka. So people have joined from different countries, different universities, Boto University. We are happy to have all of you join us here. Please let's utilize the chat box and put all our questions and all our contributions and everything in there, and then we'll pick it up and give to the facilitator to respond as the session goes on. At this point, I would like to call Miss Irene Dufie. If you are ready, kindly take over and introduce our speaker for today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Felicia, for the great introduction, and also Prof. Raju, thank you for your presentation. And so our facilitator today is Dr. Michael Bocce. And then just a little bit about him. He's the Director General and Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for Educational Planning and Administration, IEPA, a UNESCO Category 2 Center of Excellence at the University of Cape Coast, UCC, Ghana. He earned his PhD in Higher Education and Student Affairs from Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, USA. He received his Master's of Educational Administration and Bachelor of Education degrees from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. His research interests include contemporary issues in educational leadership, international and comparative higher education, and student affairs, diversity and inclusion in education, school improvement, and educational experiences of underrepresented population in education. Prior to joining the IEPA faculty, he served as the Dean of Students at Hiwas College in Madisonville, Tennessee, USA, co-instructor of graduate courses and higher education at Ohio University, residential coordinator at the Ohio University, principal administrator assistant at the School of Business, University of Cape Coast, and hall administrator at Valco Hall, University of Cape Coast. Dr. Bocce had also served as college improvement advisor for the colleges of education in Ghana under the government of Ghana, transforming teacher education and learning TTL program. Furthermore, he serves as a co-instructor of the IEPA UCC University of Maryland College Park Global Classroom Initiative, a facilitator at the University of Buffalo, University of Cape Coast Leadership Empowerment, coordinator of the University of Cape Coast Tampere University Student and Staff Mobility Program 2020 and 2021 to 2022 to 2023, under the auspices of the Erasmus Plus International Credit Mobility. His other professional engagements include student affairs in higher education, consultant for the AAU, member of Education Sector Research Group at the Ministry of Education Ghana, and board member of TTL Ghana. Our guest facilitator is also committed to mentoring, educating, and learning from others. He brings his practical experience to the classroom and develops an intentional approach of applying theory to practice in his engagement with students, faculty, staff, and policymakers. His engagement with educational throughout his career, he has represented research outcomes and facilitated workshops in local, regional, international levels. Our guest facilitator today is the Director General and Senior Research Fellow, Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, a UNESCO Category 2 Center of Excellence at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. It is my singular honor to invite to you our facilitator today, Dr. Michael Bocce. Thank you, Doc, for joining us, and we are waiting to share today in your wisdom and the knowledge you bring to the table. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I am so excited to be with senior colleagues and colleagues this afternoon. And I believe there's play in higher education in African universities and the need for all of us to support students to develop and grow and be successful. So I believe you can see my screen now.
Yes, Prof, we can see you.
All right, great. So we are looking at, as part of the Leading and Managing a 21st Century University series, we are looking at student management and development in African universities. And we'll have this discussion in the context of diversity and inclusion. I will begin with an intro, just presentation overview. So there's going to be an introduction, and I'm going to use a very short video for my introduction, and Mr. Kwasisam, I'll signal you to play the video. So I'll begin with the introduction. We'll spend a few minutes to go through some reflection questions based on the video. And then we will look at student criteria. Who are our students? Who is a typical African student? And we will discuss that. I will frame the discussion in a theoretical context, and then we'll look at some innovative models of managing student services. And then we'll look at student involvement in African universities. To what extent are we involving and engaging our students? And then we'll look at what that means for practice. And then we'll look at some aspects of diversity and inclusion. We'll talk about privileges and oppression. And then diversity and inclusion programming. How do we bring issues of diversity and inclusion to ourselves, educate ourselves through programming, and then we will end the day. So, Mr. Kwasisam, if you could play the video, I will appreciate it. Okay, so as we wait for the video to roll, let me begin asking these reflection questions, and you can respond, react with your voice, or you can react in the chat section. And our colleagues at AAU, it appears we are getting the video. All right, so there you are.
We're building a better future through our research, our work with communities and schools, but most of all through our students who are tomorrow's educators, psychologists, entrepreneurs, technology experts, NGO leaders, and so much more. They come to TC to burnish their skills and gain the knowledge they need to change the world.
I'm a student teacher and I teach 10th grade. Many of these students are almost invisible. I've been working so hard to become an individual for them.
When Jessie Singh's family could not accept her career aspirations, she was helped by compassionate teachers. Jessie, a scholarship student at Teachers College, has found more of them at TC, including Professor Yolanda Seeley Ruiz.
As a high school student, after being placed in foster care, I had nowhere to turn to, and I hated school. About Shakespeare, when I just lost my family, like, what does that matter to me? Some of my professors here, Adele and Yolanda and Pat, when we're working in groups, they'll just come up to you and hand on your shoulder. How are you today? Are you doing good? Being able to say, hey, like, I acknowledge that you are here and I acknowledge that you are an individual. And it means so much. I see it in my classroom every day. And it's much more than teaching a subject. It's about teaching humanity.
As a child, I never really identified as a scientist, and I never really saw pictures that reflected who I was or things that I identified as. My mother's a nurse, and I never really identified my mother as a scientist.
Edmund Ajapong, a Peter Greenman Scholarship recipient, believes his life and work have been transformed by Teachers College science education professor Christopher Emden.
I met Dr. Christopher Emden when I was in 9th grade. He was my physics teacher. He used like these hip-hop approaches to engage his class. I went to college, and as a freshman in college, I was a biochemistry major. I really thought about all the students who were in my position when I was in middle school and high school, and how many students of color had really bad experiences when it came to science. So right now I'm a 6th grade science teacher at Pelham Gardens Middle School, located in the North Bronx. It's actually in the same community where I went to school.
And I've been very inspired by Professor Marian Mendenhall, what I have learned in her course about teacher education and education in emergencies in developing countries.
With scholarship support, Osama Mirza has worked closely with TC faculty in both international education and curriculum and teaching. They've helped him develop an entirely new approach in Pakistan to teaching everyday people the basics of delivering emergency medical care.
I'm launching a non-profit organization in Pakistan. The purpose of this organization is going to be to go to far-flung areas in Pakistan to provide people who live there with the capacity to handle disasters themselves. Enormous problem in Pakistan is that health services are scarce, and at times it can take an ambulance 2 hours to reach the disaster site. These people need to learn how to manage the situation, how to carry out basic first aid. What I've learned at TC has been instrumental in helping me start this organization, because now I know what sort of teaching approach to use.
I am one of 11 children and the first one in my family to go to college.
Supported by a scholarship and inspired by TC professor Noah Dresner, Patricia Gonzalez is working as a program advisor at New York Institute.
It was really hard to say I am Latina and my first language is Spanish. It was really difficult to love and be the Latina woman that I wanted to become. I think Noah Dresner did a beautiful job at empowering me to become that woman that I always wanted to become, but I just didn't know how my voice can be incorporated into my education. So it was no longer important what the books were saying. It was like, what does your story say to this? I've never envisioned myself running for office or becoming a president of a college, but I think I've gained the empowerment that I needed. It's almost like the key to my ignition to just dream so big. TC has been the place to expand my wings.
Help TC students like Jesse, Edmund, Usama, and Patricia pursue their vision of a better future. Help us achieve the top priority of TC's campaign, supporting student scholarships. Teachers College, where the future comes first.
All right, so thank you very much for the video. Let me share my screen again. Yes.
Prof, if you can kindly put the presentation on presentation mode. We want to see it bigger than it currently is.
Right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the video. Briefly, I showed this video to establish one fact, that if you listen to the experiences of the 4 students, there is one common denominator, and that is they all had very good relationship with their teachers and their professors. And they had supportive professors who held their hands and took them through the various transitions that they were going through. And their story tells us all that these professors and teachers and academic advisors supported them to be successful. So let us remind ourselves of this fact. Now let's come to my question. What does the world require of university graduates? The world has entrusted students in our care. 4 years, we are spending time with them to prepare them for the world. What is the world's expectation of the students after we have taken them through the process and have graduated them. And again, you can respond using your voice. You can also respond using the chat platform, and then they will be read to all of us. So this is a reflection question to all of us. What does the world require of university graduates? How does university life prepare students for life after graduation? And you can respond to any of them. How do students change in the university? And how do the changes take place? What university experiences were the most profound in your development when you were in college? How and why? We can take about 2 or 3. What does the world require of university graduates? How does university life prepare students for life after graduation? How do students change in a university, and how do the changes take place? And what university experiences were most profound in your development? How and why? 2 minutes, then we'll continue.
Kwesi, I think you can read from the chat, please, of the response.
Okay, so from Carl Herman, he's saying that the world requires a generic and specialized skills as appropriate. From HP, the world would require graduates to fit well in corporate world. From Tom Atonga, university gives students employability and entrepreneurial skills, especially soft skills.
All right, so thank you very much. Specialized skills, that is an expectation that they are fit for employment and that they are able to deliver and make contributions toward the development of their communities. Are we seeing that? Yes.
Also from Namara Rose, it requires those who are able to adapt to the environment, employable, and who are humane, And then also from Nozinwe Delamini, specialized in soft skills. These are the comments so far.
All right.
Finally, from Bamfo Ajay, they are able to create jobs. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Chrissy. So job creation, specialized skills, employability, ability to support their communities. My question is, if you look at our universities on the continent, are we seeing these outcomes in our students the way we want to see them? Are we integrating approaches to develop students into these categories that we have mentioned? Are we seeing these approaches in our curriculum? Are our degree and postgraduate and PhD programs preparing us towards this end? How does university life prepare students for life after graduation? So as you begin your freshman year, second year, third year, final year, you complete, throughout the process, how do we do it? How do we prepare our students for life after graduation? Any specific example from any African university? How do you do it in your university? And this is very intentional and very conscious. And as we do this, how do the students change? And how do these changes take place? Are we witnessing the changes? And if you can give your own example from yourself, what university experience, is there one particular university experience during your student days that you would describe as most profound? And why would you describe that as most profound? We can take one and then we'll continue. Any quick comment? One comment and we'll continue.
Yes, Prof. Someone says I can give the example of the Boto graduate profile. I don't know whether he would want to speak. Mr. Tom Atonga.
Okay,
So
Mrs. K, let me.
You can unmute and then he can speak.
Okay. All right. So Tom, please go ahead, unmute your microphone and speak.
Good afternoon. At Boto University in Botswana, we realize that preparing our graduates for the world of work is very challenging, and not just the world of work. Preparing our graduates to be useful and productive members of society is a very huge task. So we don't just focus on giving our students the hard skills in science, in business, but we also focus on developing their soft skills, which is now what top employers are looking for. Employers are looking for students who can think critically, who can collaborate, students who have an entrepreneurial mindset, even though maybe they're employed, but they still have that entrepreneurial mindset where they're employed. They can help to add value in those organizations. So as a university, we've come up with a program called the Boto Graduate Profile, where we deliberately integrate these skills in our learning and teaching. It's not very easy, especially to teach soft skills. So we've had to, work around this with our professors so that as they teach the hard skill in their subject area, they also focus on some of those soft skills that I've mentioned, like collaboration, critical thinking. And we have come up with a number of techniques. Actually, we have put it in what we call a toolkit, which helps our lecturers, sort of a generic toolkit, which can help a lecturer. For example, when you're in class and you're teaching auditing, how on top of teaching auditing do you also help students to work collaboratively? How do you help them to think critically? How do you help them to, for example, to think entrepreneurial in a way that they can create value? So this is something that we are having as a project. We've had support from INSEAD University in France. We also have local support. We are doing a lot of collaboration with other institutions, and it's coming along very well. We see that we are now producing students who are in demand in the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate what you have shared. And exactly that is what 21st century universities do. They intentionally do this. Students typically don't learn these soft skills in the classrooms. And 21st century universities, successful 21st century universities, have ways to help students develop these soft skills out of the classroom through projects and programs and activities and internships and student employment in their own universities. Sometimes when you discuss the issue of employing students, it appears it can't happen. But I don't see why our own students can't work in the libraries 10 hours a week, so they gain some employable skills while even in school, because these are things that we don't typically teach in the classrooms. And these soft skills are usually developed through an activity. When they do it, they get it. And it must happen outside the classroom through co-curricular activities. So I'm happy that our friend talked about collaboration with practitioners in the field. You are teaching banking in a subject in a classroom. There are banks within the community. What prevents you from bringing a bank official, a staff of the bank, to come to your classroom and share experiences at the banking hall? You don't do it. You have read it in books as a teacher, maybe. And there are a lot of practitioners who we can collaborate and partner with and bring them to the classroom to support us. Okay. All right, so let's move on. How do we know in our students, student characteristics? Who are our students? If we are asked to describe who our students are, what would we say? Typical student in an African university. We refer to them as working computers, and we can't support them when we don't know them. And in many instances, we don't know our own students, and therefore we are not able to support them. We don't know their needs because we don't know them. And we don't know them because sometimes we don't even listen to them. Our current students grew up with computers and the internet. They use computers for many aspects of their lives, many activities in their lives. They use it in communication, entertainment. They are resourceful and have more access to information. Sometimes when you are driving on campus, you have your own students with earpieces blocking their ears, and they have their eyes on their phones. They don't look up. So if you are driving and you don't take care, you knock them down because their whole life is on computers. We have some students who don't sleep in the night. They are on social media all the time. How do we help them to grow when we don't know them? So we need to know who our students are. Most of our undergraduate students are between the ages of 18 and 23. And they are relatively young as compared to ages of undergrads 30 years ago. They are less experienced most of the time. They are easily compromised, and they need guidance. They document many activities, many aspects of their life. They keep track of nearly everything, even in shops. When they are buying stuff, sometimes they will take a picture, ask friends, is this color okay? Compare this color to that color. The friend would quickly reply, immediately reply, and then they make their choices. They are all over social media, posting pictures of meals, drinks consumed in the day, happenings in the lecture rooms, a joke, a sour joke that a professor shared. They share all this all the time, and that is what we have. These are the students that we have, and it is our responsibility to support them and help them to grow and develop, because if they don't, they will graduate and become problems for us after graduation. Despite these, they are multitasking. They consider it right to watch TV while studying or writing a paper and replying to messages, while tweeting, liking stuff, and commenting on Facebook. And they do all these things together. Sometimes even in driving, very scary, they will be holding their phone with their right hand, the left hand will be on the steering wheel, and then they will be sipping a drink. All the hands sensors are busy, and they are still driving. That is what we have. Many of them cannot go more than 10 minutes without checking their laptops, smartphones, and tablets. They are friends of different cultures. They appreciate diversity, and we need to support them to relate with diversity well. They are exposed to different cultures because of globalization. They read, they watch, they dress, eat, dance like they are natives of those foreign cultures. If you come to our universities, you see a lot of foreign culture coming into our universities. Sometimes we are even afraid that foreign culture is taking over our own universities. They appreciate diversity. Sometimes you see antisocial behavior. Sometimes they are violent. We've read and learned and seen instances of occultism, drug abuse, sexual harassment, and now we are beginning to have emerging different sexual orientations. It's happening in Ghana, and I know it's happening in other African countries as well. How are we managing these things? Sometimes these are very difficult conversations, but we need to have them and support our students and help them to be successful. At any time, if you have questions, please, you can ask the question in the chat platform, and then our friends at AAU will read them to us. We have some underrepresented student populations on our campuses. And when we talk of underrepresented student populations, we mean students who believe they are the minority. And these students have special needs, and sometimes we forget about them. We have students from foster homes. At the University of Cape Coast, for instance, I have interacted with about 9 students who, for the first time in their life, are living outside the foster home. At 18, they come to the university, and they have to leave the foster homes. And they have no home, because during vacations, after 18, they don't go back to the foster homes. One of them spoke with me just about last 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about as students are excited about the upcoming Easter break, he has no home. And when students are excited a week or two before Christmas because they are going home, he has no home. And that is a nightmare. And these are students that we forget about them. Differently abled students, first generation students, students who are the very first in their entire generation, in their entire family to come to the university. They have special needs. They never heard the stories about the universities. They never heard the stories about relationships between students and professors. And they never heard stories about the residence halls. These students must be identified at the point of admission so we can support them. That is what 21st century universities do. They know their underrepresented student populations and they have special programs to support them. Students who are parents, and if you look at our campuses, where we have them, they are mostly women. How are we supporting them? I remember last year I was a supervisor for an exam. And during the exam, big class, about 80, almost 100 students were in the big hall writing the exam. I observed as the supervisor that one of the students was not concentrating, but was looking outside. She would look outside for a few minutes and write. And then I also observed that there was a baby with a man, and the baby was crying, and we could hear the cry of the baby in the hall. It dawned on me that the crying baby, the baby who was crying, could be the child of the student who was writing the exam and wasn't paying attention. I approached her and realized that, yes, she wanted to go out and take care of the child. I consulted, and we allowed her to go out, breastfeed the child. The child slept within about 10 minutes. She came back to continue the exams, and the minutes that she spent outside attending to the child, we added that minutes to her time. The point I'm making is that these are real issues on our campuses. How are we supporting them? International students, sometimes completely unknown to the cultures of the countries where they are. When I went to the Ohio University for my PhD in 2007, I experienced it. There were a lot of things that were completely new to me, but I was supported. Structures, systems, resources supported me, and I was successful. Students who support themselves financially, students who feel marginalized, and students who feel they don't matter. And there are some students like that within our own campuses, either based on economic reasons, either based on social identities, either based on ethnicity, or even where the person is coming from. Again, the big question is, do we know them? How do we identify them? How do we support them? Because they are in our universities, they exist, and these are real. So how do students develop? The ways that a student grows, progresses, or increases his or her developmental capabilities as a result of enrollment in an institution of higher education. So as soon as a student enrolls in an institution of higher education, the expectation is that some growth must happen. All human development occurs in response to some kind of strain. When there are challenges, we get more innovative and we develop. COVID-19 has been a strain on the entire humanity. The entire global world has been hit by COVID-19. In the midst of this strain, there have been innovations and creativity. We have vaccines that were developed at a very short period of time as compared to what the literature says about the development of vaccine. That is good news. We've grown, we've developed. Development is a holistic experience, and challenge must be present to generate new responses and adaptations. So as we go through challenges, as students go through challenges, they grow. But the challenge must be balanced with some level of support. Education should help students or individuals gain mastery over the environment and control over self. Now, the theory of, and I indicated earlier that I'll frame the conversation in some theory, the theory of support and challenge. This was initially developed many years ago, 1967, by Stanford. And he developed this theory for student development based on a balance of challenge and support. Too much support with little challenge creates a comfortable environment for the student where little development is possible. So when you make the student so comfortable with a lot of support without challenging them to take initiative, we don't see much growth among the students. However, too little support with too much challenge makes development an impossible and a negative experience. But so when it is too much of a challenge with very little support, the students don't grow. And therefore, there must be a very good balance between the support and the challenge. Allow them to take risk, but follow them with your eye, and as soon as you realize that they are failing, support them to be successful. There is a term in student affairs literature referred to as helicopter parents. Helicopter parents are parents who are hovering around the campuses where their wards are. They want to visit every day. They call 4 times a day. What are you eating? What did you eat? What are you wearing? Are you wearing the blue dress or the black one or the green shirt or the yellow one? The parents are always there. That too much support affects growth and development among the students. So we need a balance. And how do we create that balance? It is a balance that must be created by 21st century university leadership. They do it, and they do it in such a way that their students grow and are successful. And they do it not by word of mouth. They do it through policy, they do it through practices, they do it through intervention, and they have systems and officers and professionals trained in these areas to support the students. Again, do we have them? So the support, still we are the support challenge pendulum, where Strange 2015 took advantage of Sanford's work in 1967 and also came out with similar findings. Development occurs as individuals reach points of readiness and respond to timely and appropriate learning experiences. So when we give students the opportunity to respond timely and appropriately to learning experiences, they grow. Are we giving them these experiences outside the classroom? How are we engaging them outside the classroom? Students have many hours, a lot of time outside the classroom. If you take the number of hours that students have within a week, most of those hours are spent outside the classroom. And in many of our universities, we don't guide and support students how to spend their time outside the classroom. There are very limited programs and activities, and even when we have them, they are not targeted. They are not intentional. And most of the time, they don't even have learning outcomes. If the co-curricular activities must complement the classroom experiences for us to develop the soft skills, then we must treat the co-curricular activities, the projects, the programs, the service learning, the community service, we must treat them as part of the curriculum with objectives, learning outcomes, so that we can assess them and use this assessment as part of our regular end of semester, end of term, end of year assessment. Because studies have shown that the co-curricular activities, the out-of-class activities, usually are the best experiences for our students. Development occurs as individuals respond to novel situations and tasks that challenge their current level or capacity. So we must create a platform for students to respond to novel situations within our campuses. Life of our students go beyond the classroom experiences, and we must take advantage of the many hours that is spent outside the classroom. So that support, challenge, equilibrium is important, and we need men and women, professional men and women, to be able to help us and help our students go through these experiences.
Yeah. When is about
all right, so guiding questions. Look at your campuses. Look at your universities. What are some of the campus features, either policy or program or practice, that you believe enhance student experiences? What do strong performing colleges and universities do to promote student development and success? And there are some strong performing universities. We know what they do and we know how they do it. The template is there. If you can't do anything at all, let's take the template, situate it in our context, and it will work. What are the higher education management approaches at these highly effective institutions? I'll pause here for about 5 minutes and listen to questions and comments, if any, and then we will continue. If there are some comments in the chat session, Chrissy and your team, if you could read them. So 5 minutes, let's reflect on some of the issues that we have discussed so far, and if you have contributions and comments, feedback and questions, please let us hear your voices as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. So we have a few comments with the first part of the presentation. This is in French by Azopta Bella. La communauté attend que l'université trouve les solutions aux problèmes sociétaux. Wonderful. So that is, she's saying that the community or the world expect that students would solve or have solutions to societal problems. That is just a direct translation in English. University life prepares students for life after graduation or become good citizens in their society. And the students should be able to develop skills into sell and then be positive on the job market or create their own firms and recruit other graduates. I think these are some of the comments. Let me go down a bit. We prepare them to acquire analytical skills. We mainly focus on technical skills. I think these are well placed.
All
okay,
right.
So this is coming from Mrs. Nana Noel. She is asking, how can we really destroy or kill violence spirit in students' mind in university campus? And I think this is very critical, Prof. And we may give you some few minutes to respond to this particular one, if you may.
Sure, I will. So let me begin with that last one, violent mindsets. Let me give an example of what I did some time ago with some students. So I was giving about 12 students to advise as their academic advisor. And these 12 students were students who have been identified as very high risk students. High risk because they've been on probation, they violated their probation, have been on suspension, have gone to suspension and returned, and they are not reforming, they are not changing, and they are very close to being expelled from the university. So I was tasked to advise them for 1 semester. In my interactions with them individually, sometimes I meet them as a group, I realized that they never knew the word called love. Nobody from home, from the community, had ever demonstrated love to them. So that was one of my findings. I also realized that they don't really think the path that they were on could lead them to juvenile detentions, could lead them to prison. They have heard about prison stories, but it hasn't been close. So I decided to do one crazy thing. And sometimes I do that. So I made arrangements with a prison facility and decided to embark on an educational trip to that facility. And this was intentionally planned. Now I had objectives clearly stated. I had my expected learning outcomes clearly stated. So we went on a trip. And then I had also arranged for the officers at the prison, at the juvenile center, to arrange for young people within their age who are there, who are inmates of the prison, to share their stories with them. So they got 3 people, 2 guys and 1 lady. Now, when we went there, 6, I went with 6. My plan was to go with 6 and later go with the other 6. So I went with 6. And then they brought the 3 people to share the experiences. Incidentally, all 3 were university students who had done exactly what my boys were doing and had ended in the prison. it was as if the inmates were replaying their own stories. The most difficult among them started sharing tears. He was sobbing. And I was shocked because I never thought that that guy had tears. So after the trip, you know, it was a very sober kind of thing. Driving back, they were all very quiet in the vehicle. I was driving them. We got back to campus, and I decided, as part of my plan, I decided to engage them in a 30 minutes reflection. And during the reflection, they poured out, they cried. That changed them. I didn't preach to them. I made them face it, and that reformed them. And that is why sometimes, well, not even some, most of the time, we must try to be more innovative and creative and think about ways that these must be done. But the reality is that this was done by a professional. This was done by somebody who had gone through the training and knows how to support students to be successful. And that is why every university must have people who are trained to take care of these to take care of our students outside the classroom, academic advising, and other out-of-class activities. Student affairs is a profession, and people go through postgraduate and PhD programs in student affairs. And when they graduate and they are employed in the universities, all they do is to engage students outside the classroom, and they make things happen. And that is what 21st century universities are doing, because students are critical. If we don't have our students, we don't have the university. I know I don't have a job if all my students decide to leave and transfer to other universities. But many African universities are fortunate and lucky. Our students don't leave, no matter the experiences. They don't leave, and most of the time they don't leave because they don't have the option to leave. So it is possible. It is possible when we plan it well and we execute it well. It is possible that we can change them. Their violent mindset will change. Sometimes they need somebody to talk to. Sometimes they need somebody to assure them that, hey, it will be well. I love you and I'll support you to be successful. Most of the time, the students who are in this category don't have it.
Okay, Prof. Let me pick another question. This is from Mrs. Nana Noel. She says, is it always very important to dismiss or sack students who misbehave on campus? And then maybe I'll take two more, then you can come in. This is a comment. It says, I would think the institution welcomes the student and then builds a relationship through the encouragement of active engagement at different levels and through different activities. It's a comment by Widard Martin. And then let me pick one question. Impactful package. Thank you, Prof. Please, how do we manage lack of sponsorship for students and supervisors for conference attendance from university management? This reduces students' commitment to scholarship. Dr. Chioma Blaise Tikere from University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. So you can come in, Prof. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much. So let me begin with a comment. Relationships matter. Students need relationships. We all need relationships. And students who are successful usually have good relationship with their professors and with other staff members of the university. We must create that platform for relationships. And that is why we have academic advisors and we have counselors in your classroom space. Be a friend to your students. Know them. When they are not in their normal disposition, you should be able to identify. I tell my students and my colleagues that within the first 3 weeks of the semester, I know my students who are likely to fail. I know those who are at high risk and likely to fail. What do I do then? Once I identify them in week 3, I spend time with them. I engage them, I speak with them, I encourage them, and 9 out of 10, they pick up and they are successful. Because students also go through stuff. Students also have challenges. Students go through stress, and they need people, they need us to support them to go through these difficulties. There was a question about whether we need to dismiss students when they violate. Yes, students, universities have their own rules and regulations. and there are sanctions. So if you break the law, if you break the school regulation, the sanctions must apply. But there are two things. You apply the sanctions, and you also make sure that you take the student through an educational interaction. So, because it is the educational piece that will bring reformation. The punishment by itself does not give any opportunity for students to reflect. Somebody must initiate the reflection piece, because these are students and they haven't finished growing. I'll give another example. Some time ago, I recommended for one of my students to be suspended because he was violating probation and all that. So I made a recommendation and he was suspended. Now, before he went on suspension, he came to my office because he needed to submit some stuff. I was a residential coordinator in a hall. He needed to come and submit his key and that kind of stuff. So when he came, I told him that, John, for the 8 weeks that you are going to stay home, I'm going to call you 8 times. I'll call you every Friday and check on you. And then he shouted, you call for my suspension, don't call me. Then he left. He banged the door and then he left. The first Friday I called him. And then his response was, what do you want? On high notes. And I said, I'm checking on you because I promised to do that. He hung up. The following Friday I called. And then he responded, what do you want from me? And I said, I want you to come back as a better student. That is all that I want. And I'll continue to call. And then he hung up again. The third week I called again, same time. And he said, now tell me exactly what you want and I'll do it. And I said, reflect on your past experiences, things that you have done, things that led to the probation and the subsequent suspension. Think about them. Make a plan as to how you are going to change and come back a better person. And when you're able to do that, you make me happy and you also be happy. Then he asked, so what do I do? And I said, send me a draft. Send me a draft. Send me a draft of your roadmap. He did it. He sent it to me. We went through together. I called him for 4th week, 5th week, 6th week, 7th week, and 8th week. He came back to school. And when he came back, he had changed. He came to my office and thanked me for pushing him and supporting him and not giving up on him. We don't have to give up on our students because they are still growing. So when you have to dismiss, when you have to put, or when you have to put them on probation, go ahead and do it as prescribed by the school regulations. But follow up and make sure that you are supporting them to be successful. Okay, I think we can continue if there aren't any more comments.
One comment just came through. It's actually from Kwesi Sam.
Okay.
He says, thank you, Doc, for highlighting the relevance of relationships. We always misconstrued the student-lecturer relationship and success. We always looked at the negatives. How do we project the positives to encourage academics on the continent to build supportive relationships with our students?
We must share the good stories. We must share the good stories of our relationship with our students. And that's the way to go. People must hear the stories. People must hear the good things that we are doing. People must hear the life that we are changing in our universities. And when people hear these stories, they will want to do same. So, Kwesi, let's tell the story publicly, loudly, for everybody to hear the good thing that we are doing with our students. So my last comment, my last bullet here talks about higher education management approaches at highly effective institutions. So how do they do it? How do 21st century universities do it? They have some innovative approaches that are more student-centered and that lead to enhanced student growth and student development and student success. So let me take you through a few of these innovative practices. And I know that some of the African universities do practice these things, even though we may not call them as such, but we do. So there are 3 basic innovative approaches that Manning et al. 2006 discusses. The first one is student-centered ethic of care. The second one is student-driven model. And the third one is student agency model. These are all student-centered approaches where they have relationships with their students, they support them, they get them involved, they engage them in the communities, they engage them within the universities. Sometimes they employ them, they give them student employment on campus. They have time for them because they know that without their students, they don't have jobs. So all these approaches are student-centered, but there are a few variations. So I'll briefly take us through this. So the student-centered ethic of care. Nordins wrote about it first in 1984 within the context of student affairs. It has been in the social welfare literature for many years, but Nordins brought it into student affairs, where he emphasized care and relationships. And we talked about it, show them some love and continue to develop the relationship. So this approach emphasizes on care and relationships. Response to those in need. Listen to our students. When students knock on your door and they enter, meet them, welcome them with a nice face, no matter how busy you are, because you never know what will happen to that student the next minute, if you're not able to help him or her. Caring involves stepping out of one's own personal frame of reference into the others. When we care, we consider the other's point of view, one's objective needs, and what one expects of us. So that is caring. And we need to extend this to our student, and that is what the student-centered ethic of care approach is talking about. It has some strengths, it has its weakness, and then I added the role of student affairs within this context. So what are the strengths of this particular approach? Level of service available is driven by ability of student affairs to devote time to students in need. So in our offices, we are all student affairs professionals, practitioners in one way or the other. In the classroom, we are expected to support our students. In our various offices, we are expected to support us. So we may not have the training, the academic training, but even from our cultural background as Africans, we know about how to care. So let's dig into our cultural wealth. A lot of them, some of our proverbs and sayings are all talking about relationships and caring. So let us do that. Compassionate means of response. A student asks you a question, you answer nicely. You show some compassion. Climate where each member is valued. Every member of the community, whether the person is a student or a laborer or a cleaner, must be valued because they have contribution to the growth and development of the university. Sometimes, if you are not careful, we think we are the only most important people on campus. But there are many, all of us, every individual on a university campus is important. Environment of trust develops. When you build a relationship, you trust them. Sometimes we think that all students are not good. All students are mischievous. So when they are even telling us the truth, we don't believe them because that is a perception. Every student is a bad boy or girl. When we develop the relationships, we will build trust. The weakness is that it is time consuming. You must have time to be able to practice this approach. You need to spend time with the students. What should our Dean of Students and their offices be doing? Develop services and programs with the goal of facilitating student success and maximizing student development outcomes. What program do you have in your directorate, in your office, in your division as the Dean of Students? How are you rolling out programs to help your students to grow outside the classroom? Student affairs and academic affairs must move together. And student affairs, out-of-class programs and activities must be enhanced to complement the academic activities because we know, because studies have shown that students who engage and are involved on campus are more successful. They perform better, they graduate on time, and they are more successful after graduation because they got involved and they got engaged in a lot of campus activities. The student-driven approach. There are some assumptions. This approach assumes trust in students' ability to manage collegiate functions. You must trust your students to be able to perform. because you know them and you know that they can perform. If you don't trust them, forget it. Do the purely administrative model where students don't matter. And it understands the second assumption, understand potential of college environment to teach student leadership. So this model understands, accepts, assumes that within the college university environment, students can learn to be good leaders through what they get their hands on, through the various programs, through the various campus organizations, through the clubs. Students can learn leadership. Leadership is learned. If you want to be a good leader, learn how to be a good leader. And students can learn to be a good leader if we adopt the right approach. It believes in empowering students. If you don't want to empower your students, forget about this approach. You cannot do any of the innovative approaches if you don't believe in empowering your students. Allow them to run the show sometimes and trust them that they will do well. And when you do that, one obvious outcome is student investment. The students themselves invest in the growth and development of the university. They feel part of the university. They feel they matter, and they invest in the services of the university. The last one is student-driven. Well, we are still on the student-driven. The strengths, quickly, it enriches learning outside the classroom, which is very significant. Students are better able to pull others into involvement. Students can create programs and projects and involve their fellow students, and they all grow through involvement in these programs. Both students and university benefit. If your students are doing well and they are all over in the communities, changing lives within the communities, they will tell the stories, the universities will have these stories on their website, and the university will benefit. And students will say it proudly that I learned this skill and I got this competency through my engagement in this particular activity at this particular university. It has strong sense of identification between student and institution, active alumni associations. Many of our universities in Africa have weak alumni associations. If students don't enjoy their time in the university, they will not be part of your alumni associations. So if you want your alumni associations to grow, begin with the first day that students, freshmen and women enter the university. Welcome them well. Support them through the various transitions, and when they are successful, they will love and participate in your alumni associations. I know a university recently where a couple that attended the university were at a particular college within the university donated $50 million of their money for the development of the university, because only one reason, they enjoyed their time while they were in the university. So if you want your alumni associations to grow, begin from first day of reopening when the students are coming to school. Show them love. Let them know that they are in a very good community and you are going to support them. The weakness, it works most often in traditional settings. Tough for students, not in normal pipeline of involvement. So sometimes as you push them to do it, some students find it difficult to accept that challenge and responsibility for fear of failure. It requires more training of students. And as you train your students more, what are you doing? You are giving them, you are helping them to acquire all these soft skills. So by the time they graduate, they have them already because you gave it to them and they use them while they were students. What should the Dean of Students and their offices be doing? Provide structure, encouragement, and supervision necessary for successful student involvement. Supervise them. Provide feedback, encourage them, assure them of your support. And when you do that, you have wonderful, wonderful students on our campuses. The last model, which basically is about empowerment, the student agency model. Students are responsible for life and perform as equal partners with staff. In this particular model, the highest level, you have student employees within the various offices of the university. The philosophy of this model, students have some degree of consciousness about the choices they make, which leads to empowerment. So if you are practicing the student agency model, you go all out and empower your students to be successful. The strength, students are motivated to be involved, increased learning opportunities, Education on rights and responsibilities. Students contribute as educators. What are the weaknesses? Students may reinvent issues each time, each year, if you don't supervise them well. May not appear efficient to external stakeholders like parents. Parents may be questioning, why are you allowing the students to do it all? Students will make mistakes, that is real, but that's part of the learning process. Student affairs responsibility here, use hands-off approach. Allow them to do it. As students take ownership and are invested in creating a positive campus environment, empower your students to take initiative as part of the end of semester examinations. Get them to work on projects. Get them to work on some community initiatives and use that as part of your assessment. Let's change our curriculum. Let's integrate some of these out-of-class activities that help students to develop the soft skills into our formal curriculum. In your exams, answer 3 questions out of 5 questions for 3 hours is not helping the students. It's all testing knowledge, and it doesn't help us. We need to begin to shift and test more on the understanding and application of the concept that we are teaching them. And we can only do this when we integrate some of these practical aspects of their training and learning into our assessment of our students. I'll pause for questions and comments if there are any before we try to look at the application, the real application of the models. So how do students really get involved on our campuses? The first slide is about some studies that confirm that students who are involved in on-campus activities are more successful. Students who live in the halls are more satisfied with their college experience. We need to support off-campus students. We have many of our students these days who don't live on campus because our residence halls are unable to accommodate all our students. Those students are part of the university. We need to support them. Some are going through many challenges with their landlords and landladies within the communities where they live. Some have terrible services, no water, no reliable water, no reliable electricity, no reliable toilet facilities and all that. And we need to support these off-campus students to be successful. Students whose university experiences are less positive are hesitant to support their alma mater after graduation, and we've already talked about this. Sam, do you have some comments? We can pause for a few minutes and take them before we continue.
Okay, Prof. There is one comment from Vuahengo, and he says that, thank you for the good engagement. Copying and cheating at universities during exams or tests have become a major issue these days. Students don't seem to care at all despite warning and dismissal for others. They enter exams with phones and all sorts of devices for this purpose. How do you combat or deal with this disease from your quarters? And then just briefly, there's another one from Daniel Yeboah, and he says, wonderful presentation. What is your view about inculcating volunteerism among students? Daniel Yeboah means University of Cape Coast Monitoring and Evaluation Unit.
All right, so let me begin with the second one because it's the easier one among them. Volunteering must happen in our universities. We need to support our students who appreciate serving the community. And how do we do this? We need to begin as soon as they come to the universities. And again, if we have a plan and maybe a policy on how to engage students in voluntary activities, then many students will be willing to do it. If there is an office where students, so the office, it could be a campus involvement center, campus engagement office, so this office will arrange for voluntary activities within the community. So University of Cape Coast Hospital will need maybe 5 people to help them do some cleaning on Saturday morning. And then you make this public to the students. And those who are interested will come to that particular office, sign up for this particular voluntary activity. And then the university probably could take upon itself to transport students to the location, the venue, they finish the work, and then you bring them back to school. And when they come back to school, let them write 1-page reflection paper of what they did. That is how they learn. Voluntary activities, service learning, community service without reflection does not give us a learning outcome. Spend time and discuss it. So, did you make any meaning out of this activity? Then you push them to think, oh yes, I enjoyed it because I realized I was really contributing to community growth or community development. And then you let them write it. Let them keep it in a journal, and then once in a while encourage them to read it. They grow out of these experiences. So Daniel, it must happen. Our universities must initiate it. I know some of the campus organizations do it in our universities. I know some church religious groups in our universities that embark on some voluntary activities, but it must go beyond the voluntary associations. It should become the mandate of the institution itself to drive it at the policy level so it becomes part of the university culture. Now, cheating. I believe that till we stop overemphasis on examinations, cheating will continue. Students cheat because it is a matter of death and life. If they don't pass, they are in trouble. And most of our universities have this system of sometimes 40% continual assessment and 60% examination. So throughout the semester, you've done some assignments and you've earned some marks out of 40, which is your continual assessment. And on one day, 2 hours or 3 hours, you are going to defend 60% of your grade. Can't we turn it around? So that 60% is a life and death matter. And if a student doesn't know, the student will try to cheat. But if your examination is only 30% or 25%, and throughout the semester, you have taken the student through various projects and assessment activities and have graded them, 75 done already, exam will be a lightweight activity. Sometimes first day of class, we threaten students with exams. You are fooling, you continue fooling. You will see on the exam day. So let us stop threatening students with exams. Let us make exams less important, that not exam generally, but that one day sit down in an examination hall, sometimes with invigilators more than the students, appearing as military men and policemen, ready to arrest. That makes it scary. And there are some students who can never perform under these conditions. Some students can't conduct and write well under such strict, controlled, formal setting. They will fail. So, at the policy level, I will encourage that our academic boards begin to look at our assessment in our universities. And if we could, and I strongly recommend that we need to look at it again and ensure that the end of semester examination carries less weight. And if we do that, we'll be assessing our students well, we'll be getting the right assessment from our students, and our students will be performing well, and they will not be bothered about cheating. Because before the end of the semester, you are pretty sure where you are at. It's almost all done. And many successful 21st century universities do that. They de-emphasize that one day end of semester exam. And that is one sure way of discouraging and reducing the incidence of cheating within our universities. Do we have any more comments? So implications for practice. We've said a lot of things. Within our tertiary educational institutions, we need more mentorship programs. We have to mentor our students. Sometimes our students don't have role models, and this must be done intentionally. What we don't want them to do, we do them. So let us plan mentorship programs where it is formalized for individual mentors, and we can use peer mentors. You can use your final year students or your graduate students, postgraduate students to mentor the undergraduate students. And if you do it well, you can have your own undergraduate students mentoring senior high school students. And you can have your senior high school students mentoring junior high school students. If we do that well and we collaborate and we partner, we'll end up having national mentorship programs in all educational systems, right from primary to the university, where we'll be using our own students to mentor our own students. It is done. It has been successful in some places. We can do it because traditionally, we believe, as Africans, we believe in mentoring. Even within chieftaincy, people who have the potentials from the royal family to become chiefs is done in Ghana. They arrange for you to live for some time with a chief. So you go through mentorship and get ready. So if we are doing it culturally and traditionally, why can't we do it? Refine it, make it more scientific, and do it within our universities. Sometimes we have it on paper, it never works. Even among lecturers, in many of our universities, when you are appointed as fresh, you are given a mentor. How is the mentorship program among lecturers? How is it working in our own universities? So these things are possible, and they must happen if we want to transform our universities and make them competitive within the global market as a 21st century university. We must be intentional about leadership development. How do lecturers and professors take up leadership positions in the departments, in the faculties, and within the university? What training do we go through? Because once you are hired into an academic department, one day you become a head of department. Have you gone through any training to be able to lead well? Because leadership is science. Leadership is learned. You become a head of department, one day you become a dean. What training have you gone through to make you a leader at that level? You become a provost, you become a pro-vice chancellor, you become a vice chancellor. What is the training that our universities have designed for academic staff who go through these ranks? Because if you don't do that, we'll be leading wrongly at our various departments and schools and faculties and colleges. And we cannot support our students to develop leadership skills. We've talked about community service and service learning. They are very important. They all help us, help our students to acquire some of the soft skills that we talked about. Community service and service learning is one thing that studies have shown that it helps develop patriotism and integrity. And these are two key issues that are problems within most of our ways of life. But when you engage within the community and you appreciate the community needs and you have a sense of supporting the community because you see it as a responsibility while you're a student, you grow up and you hold high the flags of patriotism and integrity. Career services. Many of our undergraduate students have no idea how and why they entered into the academic programs. They also have no idea where these academic programs are going to lead them to in terms of career. They are just there because a friend did it and an uncle said it's a good one. So when they come, prior to our students enrolling, even at the senior high school, we must extend career services to them at the senior high school. And this is not once in a year kind of thing. We must collaborate with the high school leadership and let them know what we have in terms of programs and let them know the various professions that can come out of those academic programs. Students have a right, once you give them admission. I see the admission letter as a contract. It's a contract between the institution and the student. What are you offering me? Bachelor of Science, Computer Science. But how are you going to do it? I need to know. First year, what are the learning outcomes in my first year of the program? These documents are there, but we don't share them with parents and students. As a student, if I'm enrolling in a computer science program, I should know that in year one, I am going to, by the end of first year, I should be demonstrating these competencies and skills. So that if I don't, then I can sit back and reflect. But sometimes the students have no idea what they are developing and how they are growing and whether they are growing from one year to the other or they are just there. So we need to support our students to think. Sometimes even with your national service students who have completed their bachelors, you ask them, where do you see yourself in the next 4 years? They have no idea, because nobody has brought them, has helped them to begin to think about these things. Our national accreditation boards that approve academic programs, they must begin to recognize that the co-curricular activities are equally important. My expectation is this, that when accreditation teams visit the universities, they must look at the co-curricular programs that we have, because they complement the academic programs. The academic programs do not stand alone. If you don't have co-curricular activities with learning outcomes, accreditation should have a problem with you. But usually it is not part of what our national accreditation boards look at. Promoting collaboration among tertiary institutions. We must collaborate within the country. Various universities within the country must collaborate. We are not in competition. We are all helping to develop our own students. Within the West African sub-region, we must collaborate. We must collaborate within East Africa. We must collaborate within Southern Africa. We must collaborate within North Africa. And we must collaborate across regions. Because our potentials and challenges are similar, and we need to be meeting and comparing those most of the time. There's no competition in this. Student organizations must be supported to add value to what students have. There is something that we refer to as add-ons. Beyond the degree that you came here for, what have you added on? It could be a certificate in leadership development. It could be a certificate in conflict resolution. It could be a certificate in university teaching. It could be a certificate. It could be anything, but you must add something to what you have. And that is why it is important for our universities, departments, colleges to begin to think about short certification courses. Professionally these days, it is not everybody who has the time and space to come and spend 3 years in a regular university and go through a program. Some may not even be able to take advantage of our sandwich programs and our distance education programs. Some may have few weekends to take advantage of a certification program, specialized certification program, targeted at particular people and professionals. So you give it to them, and they learn, and we grow. These are all add-ons that our universities can roll out. We've talked about alumni relationships already. What we must do to ensure that our alumni continues to support us. In other places, apart from tuition, alumni contribution is the next highest revenue or source of revenue for many of our universities. Alumni contributions. In our cases, alumni contributions are almost negligible because many of them didn't enjoy their time while they were in the universities. So these are some of the implications for practice. We've talked about collaboration, effective responsibility of technology, effective and responsible use of technology. Now technology is driving almost everything, and our universities must invest in technology. We must invest in technology, and if we don't, the world will run away and leave us behind. We must know our student characteristics. We've talked about that. Innovative student support services. We've talked about that. We must promote safety and inclusion on our campuses. We must encourage participation and involvement. We must build community of learners. We must empower our students. We must consider student employment. Supervision assessment are critical. And then one important thing, the difference between customer service and educational customer service. In education, so look at the business world, they are interested in giving what their customers want. So if their customers want beer, they will give it to them and take the money. In education, we move away from what our students want to what they need. And as academics and professionals, we must be able to draw the line. Your SRC and student Senate, student government executive may come to you and tell you, demand what they want. We must be able to educate them and let them know that out of the 10 list of items that you want, only 3 are what you need. And you educate them to understand the difference between the wants and the needs, and you support them with the needs, because that is what will make them grow. Let's focus on our strengths. What are we doing well? Let us not be too Let us not waste too much time on the negatives. Let us be positive. Teams that focus on strengths are 12.5% more productive. And this is Strength Finder. If you focus on strength, you tend to be more productive than teams that spend their time on the negatives. Be strategic, intentional, and purposeful, and then be a leader and a team player. Being a leader and a team player means we must demonstrate honesty, we must be inspiring, we've talked about innovation already, we must be forward-looking, and we must be competent. We must model the way, we must be role models. Let us be role models and inspire our students. Sometimes challenge the status quo. Sometimes ask the questions, can we change the way we do it? And you must allow people to work. Delegation. Let us delegate. Let us empower our staff. You can't do it all. If you want to do it all, you will fail as a leader. Trust, build relationships, and allow them to get involved. And then motivate our staff. Let's be positive. Again, we'll pause and take comments, and then we'll spend some minutes to look at issues or to situate the entire conversation within diversity and inclusion. So any questions or comments? Any to clarify? Any feedback?
Okay, Prof. There were a lot of comments. Most of them are actually thanking you for the brilliant presentation. Let me quickly take one from Dr. Chioma. And she says, thank you, Prof, for this stimulating presentation. Please, how do I manage an undergraduate student, third-year student, who says she hates university education and feels under pressure by the parents' wish for her to be educated? I have encouraged her, but I feel her discomfort is beyond mere encouragement. Maybe a therapist might offer better support. What do you think? Dr. Chioma Blaise Chikere, Department of Microbiology, University of Port Harcourt. So this is a special case of a student that she's dealing with.
Okay, I'm going to make a recommendation, but I want to throw it out to our over 80 participants. Most likely somebody, one of us, two of us might have had a similar experience who may want to share to help us get to how to resolve this particular one. So if you are inspired to share your story, your similar story, if any, we will encourage you to share with us. How did you do it? How did you handle a similar situation in your university?
Please raise your hand, and then Kwesi or Irene would allow you to speak. Kindly raise your hand if you want to share with us, if you want to respond to Prof's question.
Okay, I'll begin. I'm sure by the time I finish, we would have had many more to contribute. So one thing that works very well is identifying somebody who might have gone through a similar experience to come and share his or her story with this particular student. If there are some of your past, and that is why sometimes when you have a good alumni network, it helps, because you can raise this among your alumni network, and you will quickly get one or two people who may want to speak with this particular student, because using our own personal experiences and inspire people works so well. So that is one way to go. The other way is to just engage these students and let these students appreciate the importance of education. Let these students appreciate the fact that education is probably the most powerful tool that will help eradicate poverty. And that will take one from one socioeconomic situation or level to the other. So engage this with this student. Let this student know that you care about his or her future and that of his or her family. Let this person know that you don't give up, and you are going to work with her with the entire process till she becomes successful and appreciates university. let people who have gone through the university education share their stories with him or her. And I believe that would work. It has worked in many instances, and it still works.
Okay. From the technical team, you can actually unmute yourself. But while we wait to get anyone's reaction or feedback, I'll just quickly take the next comment or question. This is also from Mrs. Nana Noel. She says, what about students who are not trustworthy? You support and encourage students, and at the end, they are showing up poor behavior. You met the cashier to receive and help someone to defend, and help someone to defend, and he or she cannot pay back the fees, then you are in trouble because you wanted to help. So she's talking about the issue of trustworthiness here. Yeah. Just quickly, okay, Prof, please respond.
Yes, so I believe that students who are not trustworthy have not finished growing. And again, we don't give up on them. We must engage them, let them know what they did was wrong, and support them to get better. Because if we don't, they will get out of school into the community, and it becomes a bigger problem. Students go through many developmental stages. Some grow earlier, develop earlier than others. Students go through, many of them, developing interpersonal relationships, issues of competence, developing this students must develop them while they are in the university. So the person who is not trustworthy has not developed that Chickering calls them the 7 vectors of student development. And if students don't develop all these vectors, including integrity, then we have problems. So students who are not trustworthy have not developed integrity. But we must say are members of our community. Even when they leave your university, they are still within the community, and they will continue to behave that way. So the point is that we don't give up on the students. We still need to engage them. If you need to bring in some counselors and some therapists, do it. But let us not give up. And the institution must play a role. The responsibility is not and should not be only on faculty and staff. At the institutional level, what is the support? At the departmental level, what is the support? At the individual level, what is the support? So let us not give up. Let's work with them, and they will get better. It is not only students who are not trustworthy. There are some adults who are also not trustworthy. And once we're able to help them to get better, then we have contributed significantly to making the world.
Okay, Prof. Padden Kuipa says that, Prof, your response on how to prevent cheating in exams is spot on. So he is appreciating your presentation. Febsin also says that this is an inspiring presentation. It's easy to achieve these things, but some students lack the attitude of cooperation. And then finally, Widad Martin says, who in your view should take up this responsibility of engaging with students? How do you deal with academics who feel that their only role is T&L or research, and the student activities outside of these are not within their role? So T&L, teaching and learning. Yes, Prof. So that's
all right. So and I'll give this. I usually don't write our content, but let me give this one. In many American universities, they have a whole huge division of student affairs, and this huge division of student affairs have many functional areas. So you go to the Division of Student Affairs in a typical American university, you will see you have the Department of Residence Life, you have the Department of Campus Involvement, or you have event services, you have psychological and counseling services, you have Center for Academic Writing or Center for Academic Support, you have many other wellness center that take care of student wellness, and many other divisions, departments. And staff within this division are trained student affairs professionals. So either they focus on academic advising, they are in the academic advising office, they focus on residential housing, residential education, they are in that space, they focus on counseling, they are in that space, We focus on events, programs for students. They are in that space. So in such universities, these professionals playing that role, we don't have it. And because we don't have it, as faculty members, we must support our students till we are able to develop our Division of Student Affairs staff with that training. Our Division of Student Affairs are doing well, they are doing very well. We have deans of students who are doing wonderfully well supporting our students. But the reality is that their offices are not resourced enough to be able to play the entire role. If you have a university of, let's say, 15,000 students, and you have one dean of students with about 12 or 10 staff who are mainly general administrators with no or limited specific skills in the various functional areas, then that is a challenge. Again, that is a challenge, and we need to invest in these areas. If you don't have the academic programs in student affairs, we must probably support some of our staff members to go outside our universities and get trained and come back, because that component is critical. That component is critical. So in the meantime, faculty and professors and lecturers must play that role. It becomes an extra work sometimes, but yes, if we don't do that and our students leave, we don't have jobs. So we must see ourselves as part of the solution and engage our students to be successful.
Okay, Prof. I think that will be all. There was a hand raised up earlier. Yes, I see it again.
Justice Mensah.
Yes, Mr. Justice Mensah. Please, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Prof, talking about implications for practice, you enumerated a number of points, but I didn't hear of mentorship and peer-to-peer learning. Can they also be complementary to academic programs?
Yeah, they can and they do. And we talked about mentorship. And I even tried to extend it beyond the university. So what we said was that we need to be role models and we need to support our own students. And if we support our students well and we mentor them well, we can even train them to the extent of our own students becoming mentors for high school students and train high school students to even become mentors for junior high school students. So we thought about mentoring. It is so important, even though we don't have it, we don't have much of it in some of our universities. It is newly hired lecturers who are giving senior colleagues as mentors and are questioned how that relationship is going or is working or not working in our universities. So mentoring is key. It helps. It's so important, and we must embrace it. And if you don't have it, we must begin to think about it and consider it seriously.
I was talking about internship.
Oh, internship.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said mentorship. No, many of our academic programs in our various universities have internship components. Many of them, you go to many of our schools of business and they have internship opportunities. But you see, the challenge is that many of our businesses, the corporate world, are no longer interested in taking on interns because they claim even though you don't pay them when they are leaving, you have to give them something small, they don't have. Sometimes they don't have space to even accommodate your students as interns. So what must we do innovatively? And I talked about creating opportunities for some of our students to begin to work on campus. So if you can have student employees in your library, you give them some stipend once every month, something, just something, and then they'll work. And I believe that sometimes our own students may even work better. They will smile, they will welcome students well in the residence halls at the porters, at the reception of the residence halls. If you have your own students there, you may not refer to it as internship, but the experience is so similar to internship. And when they are writing their CVs, they will capture that on their CVs. So I guess my point is that we need these internships. We are not getting them as we used to in the various businesses in our countries. But as universities, we must begin to think about ways to create a platform through student employment in our own universities. Student employment is cheap, very productive if you do it well. When you give them necessary training, our students do well if you tax them to some of these responsibilities.
Thank you.
Okay, Prof. So I'll quickly take the last batch of comments and then maybe you can proceed.
Sure.
This one says, much appreciated presentation on student management, Dr. Bocce Yadom. Should a lecturer write recommendation letters for recalcitrant students upon graduation? And then the last one is a comment saying, thank you very much for your insightful comments. And so that is an appreciation. But the main question is about whether they should write letters for recalcitrant students upon graduation. Thank you.
It's always a difficult, it has elements of professionalism and integrity. So you can't write what you, so you can't write, you can't write good when it's bad. I guess it's my point. So if you have all the evidence that you cannot recommend this particular student of yours, this particular former student of yours, decline to write the recommendation, will be my initial reaction. If the student may put on suspension, but it's important for us to also be sure whether that student has changed after graduation. And it's difficult to make that determination, but you can ask around. If you have some, so you can ask the student, is there somebody, you know, an employer, a supervisor that I can speak with to be sure the truth, that you, as I know you, I can't recommend you for this position, but maybe you have changed. Are there some people that you have worked with, that you currently work with, that I can speak with for me to gather some information to help me to make a decision? But if you find it difficult, just decline.
Okay, Prof, just one last one, and then you can move on. How do we handle students who engage in buying and selling in halls on campus for profit?
If buying and selling in your hall is not allowed, apply the sanctions. If buying and selling should not happen in your residence hall, and you have that documented, I believe there will be sanctions, apply the sanctions. Because, I'm saying this because maybe they can sell somewhere else. I think there is nothing wrong with our students demonstrating entrepreneurial skills, but it must be done well and in the right context. So if they can't sell in the hall, they should not sell in the hall. And if they violate that provision, apply the sanctions.
All right, Mrs. Kwabeji, Mrs. Kwashi raised her hand. So if she can go ahead.
Okay. Mrs.
Kwashi, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Gerald. I'm Mrs. Nana Noel. I don't know if it is to me that the floor is given actually.
Please, can you speak up? Speak up a little bit, please.
Nana Noel from University Institute of the Gulf of Guinea.
Hello.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes,
somebody's on the floor already.
Hold on, please. We had called Mrs. Yvette Kwashi to make her submission. So, Mrs. Nana Noel, please, when Mrs. Kwashi ends, we will call you to equally make your submission. So, Mrs. Yvette Kwashi, kindly go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. Doc, I've really had serious internet connectivity problems, but there was this portion that I heard that I would need some clarification. You talked about the examination bit, that when some students are not able to perform during exams, and that bit, I would want you to expatiate it a bit for me, because I totally agree. Because some people do not do well when it comes to end of semester exams. Like there's a school in Mauritius that my son attended. It's called African Leadership University. Examination takes just about 10% of the marks. They do industrial attachments. That also takes some percentage of the total marks for the year. And then the assignments. But I realized that in Ghana, we dwell a lot on the exams. I mean, the end of term exams. So at the end of the day, the student is not able to perform very well. I heard that bit, but then my internet kept going off and on. So I would want you to explain and then to let us know what you'll be doing about what you think should be the remedy to that. If a lot of universities can adopt that and not dwell on just the examination, the final examination that maybe carries about 70% of the total 100%, and then assignments are taking about 20%, and then maybe presentations are taking about 10%, because they do the presentations, we take part of the exam, that's about, I think, 15%, and then the industrial attachment too takes about 25%. So exams really takes about 10%. So if you can just let me know how we can also adopt that system in Africa.
Yeah. So thank you very much for sharing the Mauritius example. In fact, there are a lot of studies on some of these things, and many of them seem to point to the fact that educational systems that give lighter weight to end of semester sit-in examinations seem to do better in terms of student performance and also in terms of student of employable skills, because throughout the semester, one would have engaged the students in various attachments and internships and projects, and these activities might up to about 70%. And the remaining 30% or 20% will be for the end of semester examination. To perform better under such arrangements and under such conditions. And in most of such conditions, end of semester examination cheating is reduced. Education practitioner and professional, I believe that that is the right approach. That you assess them on various areas throughout the semester with a higher weight, and then the end of semester, end of term sitting exam is lighter. There are some special needs students who cannot perform under such strict examination conditions. As soon as they enter that space, with the formal setting and structure, with the invigilators walking up and down like policemen, they can't perform. We have difficulty assessing our students to be able to identify these differences. So for us, most of the time, it's one size fits all. Everybody will do that 60% sitting exam. If you fail, you failed. If you pass, you pass. So we need to look at some of these things in our African universities. Again, you know, we have a lot of our practices coming out of our colonial experiences, and we need to begin to decolonize many of our practices, including our research and other engagements, you know, because it is a British style and the other colonies, colonial masters. And I think it's time. We have been able to unwind some of them, but there are so many that we must unwind. We need to continue to unlearn and relearn some of these things. But I am 100% in support of the end of semester examinations having a lighter weight. Nothing more than 40% for me is the way to go.
Prof, it appears there are more questions coming up. People are enjoying. One person says that, what is your take on open book exams as a way of combating teaching in exams? And then again, when you made the comment on the buying and selling in the hall, someone says that, but buying in the hall should be allowed since the market is closer to them. I mean, buying and selling in the hall should be allowed since the market is closer to them, please.
All right, so I made reference to rules and regulations. I think universities are guided by statutes. So there should be a policy, some guidelines in living in the residence hall. And my point is, buying and selling is allowed in the residence halls, then there's no problem. But if the rules and regulations governing the management and administration of the hall is that students cannot do buying and selling in the rooms, and I added that there is nothing wrong for our students to be entrepreneurial, but in tests and confines of our rules and regulations. Open book. Open book works in systems where examinations are so I guess it depends on the context.
Okay, Dr. Michael, I think I forgot Mrs. Nana Noel. Please, you may unmute and then make your submission. But then Prof. Amani also says, very interesting session, actually. Thanks for the speaker and AAU team. Prof. Amani is the director for AAU's North African Regional Office. We are very honored to have you join us here, Prof. Mrs. Nana Noel, kindly go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for giving me back the floor. I'm sorry for the disturbance. I'm really happy to attend this session this afternoon. My worry is like all over the world nowadays, we are discovering violence in university in youth. There are many violence through internet in university abroad, even in various countries in Africa. And I'd like Prof to tell us how you can manage and handle the case of violence in the university, violence among students and violence between students and lecturers. So that's my worry. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let me make reference to some studies on student violence. Most of them seem to point to the fact that students who lead violent acts have never experienced love and have never experienced care, or hardly experienced love and care. And many of them have this feeling of we don't matter. Hello, Kwesi. Are you sharing the slide or I should?
Prof, please go ahead and share the slides.
Okay. Kwesi, do you have it? Is it, do you see it on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I can go now. Is it okay?
No, I think it's on the presentation mode yet. Okay. Maybe you could stop sharing and reshare if you're having any difficulty. All right, so whilst we wait for Prof to come back, we can just put our comments on the video in the chat pod. What is your general impression of the video? And I'm sure when he gets ready, he will be able to give some opening comments. What do you think? What do you make of the video? Just briefly, let's know what you think. We've had some comments which are encouraging, very impressive, interesting video. But if you could share what makes it impressive, that would be great. Very insightful. What was the insight? Just a word, a sentence would be great. Want to read, know your thoughts, what you think.
Okay, so this is a comment from Namara Rose. She says it shows inequality, but does not show the causes. So that's what she thought about the video. Another one from Jerry, he says it depicts clearly the inequalities in our system. And I think that was quite clear in the video. We could all see how people had old boy connections and all sort of things, making the journey more smooth for them. Whereas for others, there were a whole lot of hurdles to really jump over. I don't know if Dr. Bocce is okay now, but I'm still looking through the comments. So we'll read them, Kwesi, or I can read them as it comes until he's ready.
Yes, Mrs. King, you can.
Yes, it's fine now.
Okay, all right. Sorry for that interruption. Yeah, so nice comments about the video. We believe that it is kind of ushering us into our few comments on diversity and inclusion, that issues of discrimination are real, issues of privileges, issues of oppression are all real. And it comes differently in our context. It is difficult sometimes to get videos that are very African, so we try to get videos that are close. And that also tells a story that we also need to work more and get some of these videos and some of these content within our context. And we believe that gradually we'll get there. So, issues of discrimination. Sam and I were talking yesterday about how some of these issues are coming up very strongly within our context, and how the conversations each day, and why we need to confront these conversations and have these conversations, because that is the only way that we can work around some of these issues. So, social identity development is a process by which people come to understand their social identities. It could be issues of ethnicity, issues of gender, issues of sexual orientation, and the others, and how these identities affect other aspects of their lives. Now, social identities have different meanings based on social norms and expectations. So in our context, it has different meanings as well. Social identities are constantly changing based on time and space. It depends on where you are. It depends on which era that we are talking about. Social identities connect to the concepts of privilege and oppression. They influence how we see ourselves and how we interact with others, how we make decisions, and how we live our daily lives. The reality is that we seem to be having conflicts between social identities and personal identities. Who am I? And how does my community and my society and my country and my continent perceive me? And sometimes these are challenging. But the video clearly indicated that throughout our lives, there are various forms of privileges, and there are various forms of oppression, whether in discrimination, whether consciously or unconsciously. Sometimes a comment that you even make, that one makes about a particular ethnic group is discriminatory. But then it has an effect on the other one. And the biggest part of the conversation is, how do we react when we are bystanders? So you witness a clear incident of discrimination. What do you do as a citizen, as a global citizen, as a Ghanaian, as a Nigerian, as a Kenyan, as South African, as Egyptian? How do you react to these incidents of discrimination that we may witness? It could be a comment. How do we react? So privilege, unearned status or characteristics that provide advantage or disadvantage to some people. Unearned, that is what makes it a privilege. You got it just because you are in a particular royal family, or you are part of a particular family, or you belong to a particular ethnic group, because of your gender, because of your religion, because of the language that you speak. These things can give you some privileges, or can give us some privileges, and they are real. Oppression, inequality of power based on social identities, injustices perpetrated by privilege, consciously or unconsciously. So when one feels discriminated against, that begins the conversation of oppression. And the levels are 4: internalized, interpersonal, institutional, structural. In some spaces, in some places, you witness all of them. In other places, it's probably at 1 or 2 levels. So it depends it changes from one context to the other. How do you promote issues of diversity and inclusion at universities? We need to invest in diversity and inclusion research. Many of our universities have gender offices, and we need to support these offices to lead research in these areas. Research in these areas in Africa on issues of diversity are limited. And again, sometimes when you are looking for information out there, you don't usually get what is within a context, and we need to develop research capacity in these areas. We need to look at our diversity and inclusion policies because they change from time to time, and we need to begin to look at them. Again, it is getting more difficult, especially because we are all becoming global citizens, and we are becoming allies and friends of different cultures. How are these relationships with different cultures affecting our appreciation of diversity and inclusion? In all this, education is important. We need to read and learn, because there are many that we don't understand before we run commentary on social media and in the public domain. Active and passive programming. When we want to educate, it could be an active program where people will actually speak. It could be in the form of posters and flyers that will still educate. I ask a question: when you are a witness of a clear evidence of discrimination, what do? Do you behave as an active bystander where you confront the issue and engage people in the conversation, or you leave the scene as a passive bystander? It's none of my business. Let me get out of here. How do we react? confronting the difficult conversations. Recently in Ghana, we've had some very difficult conversations. And the Ghanaians on the platform are aware of at least one of them, a Rastafarian who was placed in a particular senior high school in Ghana, but authorities had told him, the two boys, that you can't be here because in this school we don't admit and accept Rastafarians with their dreadlocks. The education agency, appeared to have issued a directive for the school to admit them. Later, it came out that, the National Education Service, the Ghana Education Service, kind of backtracking and not fully supporting the school and leaving it hanging, leading to many media commentary and comments for the past few days. It's a difficult conversation, but we must confront and have these conversations. People have suggested that if we cannot speak about it and interpret it well, let's go to the courts so that the judiciary will decide what a school can do in relation to an individual student's right to education. So it's difficult. There have even been more difficult ones, but the reality is that we must have this conversation and we must educate ourselves. Issues of LGBTQ plus are all over the place in our universities. All over the place, talks about it. Some suspicion and perception that they exist in our universities, even though it's illegal. So illegal in some of our countries. All these difficult conversations are going on. Recognizing that we are more similar than different, I think for me is one of the most important areas. That in all these differences, we realize that we are even more similar. Our differences are very minimal. And that small difference should not, I believe, should not divide us. We should draw on our similarities and live together. Issues of privilege and oppression are real. Creating platforms for equal opportunities, being more gender responsive, and then tolerant of differences. We believe that if we're able to have this conversation continuously, there are specifics based on countries. What the conversation is in Ghana may not be the same as it is in Nigeria, but we must engage at the national level and have this conversation as we move along. Again, universities must have clear policies on issues of diversity and inclusion. What is permissible and what is not permissible. These things must be clear. Are we willing to reform and change and review some of these policies with time? Again, these are all the big questions that we must have. So finally, yes, we can manage issues of diversity, we can manage issues of inclusion, we can continue to support our students, and we will be successful. So I will end briefly with these three words that yes, we can. Thank you very much. I will take some questions, if any, and then we will bring our session to an end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. We have actually enjoyed the session. We need to find ways of making sure that a lot more of our universities get to listen to this presentation. And I'm sure we would find other platforms where we would invite you to speak, because it's so loaded with so many things that are practical and that we can really relate to. So we want to thank you so much for this presentation. Let me just go through the chat and read some comments which came. I think some of them are on the video. One person says that the video shows discrimination. Let me go on. Another one says, Reverend Constancia, he says there's need to help each other irrespective of our background. Paden Kuipa says that not all whites are privileged. Institutions should work at removing the barriers that affect those at the bottom of the social ladder, both whites and black and both genders. Namara Rose says that if we are to increase inclusion and diversity, we need to address causes of exclusion and also know that diversity is contextual. These two concepts are embedded in our cultural traditions and languages. That's the knowledge translation. I think Another comment from Ama Foriwa. Thank you, Dr. Yeadom. So a lot more of the comments are actually appreciating the presentation. I see interesting video, I see educative, I see very insightful presentation. So I don't know if there are any quick comments from your end, Doc, and then maybe we can ask participants if they have anything to say to please raise their hand, and then we'll call them to contribute before I finally call Mr. Kwesi Sam to come in. We are getting feedback from Jose Maria. Please kindly mute yourself. We can hear you. Okay.
I saw Nana Noel. Nana Noel's hand was up, if I got it right. Yes, her hand is up.
Please go ahead, Mrs. Noel. Thank you.
Unmute.
Yes.
Good.
We can hear you now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for giving me back the floor again once more. Just to appreciate, I can clap for Aria because I'm impressed every day. Since Monday, I missed the part of Monday, but since Tuesday, yesterday, and today, I'm particularly blessed. And I promise that I will really make useful, put it into practice for our institution to gain more. We are not regretting the fact that we are part of AAU, Association of African University. Today, pressure was the participation, the audio, whereas today we had no video, but it was really interactive. The day before yesterday, we're listening and it's really improving. Innovation is really making me to be proud to be member of AAU. Thank you very much. Long life to our association.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for acknowledging the good work that the Association of African Universities is doing. Is there anyone else who wants to say something? Okay. Doc, maybe you would have a final word to all of us can come in.
All right. Before Doc, I see Bamfu Ajay. Bamfu, kindly unmute and take the floor.
Right. Thank you very much for this great opportunity and to the association as well. Well, Doc, thanks for your clarity in terms of the delivery that you made this particular afternoon. What does us to play with this? Looking at the relationship between our students and lecturers relationship, in terms of our world, let's say in Africa, where the relationship is not all that cordial with most of our students and lecturers, where it had a negative impact on them. Unlike the good or positive examples that you were citing, mainly from Europe or elsewhere, you see that students are free to converse with their lecturers, and lecturers do not try to make them to be afraid, freedom of expression. So the question is the impact of our culture to having this positive relationship with our students in tertiary education. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Definitely, our we still this parents-children relationship, even within the educational system in the universities. We still see our students as our sons and daughters who can't quote and unquote misbehave around us, who must be told exactly the way it is, who must show unconditional respect because they are our children. I think that is part of the problem, and it's cultural, because we believe that when parents bring their awards to the school, they've left them in our hands. next level of parents, and we are going to take care of them. I think we probably must move away. In student affairs literature, there is something that we refer to as in loco parentis, in place of parents. When student affairs began in the early 1930s as a profession, relationship between lecturers and the students was in loco parentis, in place of parents. That has changed. Students don't want us to appear as their parents. Students are saying that we need mentors and advisors and coaches. So we need to begin to reposition ourselves from the traditional cultural setting and begin to play professionally the role of coaches and mentors. And I believe if we're able to do this, the relationship will get better. Students will be able to share their concerns with us because we are not fathers and mothers. Many of our students can't share their life experiences and their difficulties and challenges with their parents because most of the time they are even afraid of us. It has changed. When I was a kid, when I heard my dad's car, I would run away and position myself properly. If I haven't bathed, I will bath quickly before he enters. But these days, things have changed. If I'm not home by 6 p.m., my daughter will call me, "Daddy, where are you?" I didn't do that when I was a kid. So even now, the relationship with our own children is better. And my expectation is that the relationship with our students should be better. That is what we expect to happen today. But the cultural aspect is still lingering, where we see them as our parents, as our children, as our sons and daughters. But let's begin to see them as our students, because they are. Let's begin to see them as our mentees and advisees and support them professionally. And when we do that and there is trust and they know that we are not their daddies and mummies, but we are their professional supporters and mentors and coaches, they will open up and begin to share and engage us in difficult conversations and we're making an impact. So I guess my point is, let's try to move away from playing the role of parents on campus and play the role of advisors and mentors and coaches and letting the students know that we are not your parents. We are your lecturers and your mentors and your coaches, and we'll keep the relationship as such.
Okay, Doc. So Felicia, Enin wants to know whether you attended University of Cape Coast. I think she's so impressed with your.
I did. I had both my first degree and my second degree at the University of Cape Coast. So I'm a fully fledged UCC alumnus.
Okay.
Very proud UCC person.
Is there any hand?
As well.
Okay. Okay.
Not for hand. Yes, also say I also attended UCC. Thank you very much.
We are proud to have you all. And then I think we can bring the session to an end. Someone is asking about certificate, but Mr. Kwesi will give announcements during his session. I think all too soon the session has come, and I would like to stand on behalf of the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities and also on behalf of all the participants to really thank Dr. Michael Bocce for such a powerful presentation. We are very grateful that you took time to put it together, that we could actually learn lessons from it. And we are hopeful that we'll go back as better ambassadors of students. As better ambassadors in dealing with our students, because we have learned a lot from you today. We want to thank you so much. We also want to thank all our participants. We are very grateful for engaging with the session. You responded to all the questions and you were interested to get to learn to know more. So we thank you too for being highly interactive group of participants. I think the session is not ending today. We'll have another session tomorrow to come in tomorrow as well. At this point, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Mr. Kwesi Sam, who would be giving us any announcement and then also close the session formally for us. So Kwesi, over to you. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you, everybody. Over to you, Kwesi.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Felicia Kwagbeji. She is a staff at AAU in charge of communications and publications. So you can just deduce that from her presentation. Thank you for the excellent moderation today. And then also want to thank you, Professor Dr. Bocce, for the excellent delivery as well. I have some few announcements. Just as Felicia mentioned, we are bringing this whole session to a close tomorrow, and we also have another insightful and exciting package. We are discussing resource mobilization in African universities. Earlier today, we had Professor Dr. Raju sharing just a tidbit of that with us on financing higher education in Africa. Tomorrow, Professor Rosemond Bohini will also take the floor and share with us some contemporary and innovative strategies to mobilize resources to advance our mandate as universities on a continent. Resources, not only money, but other tangible and intangible resources as well. So Professor Rosemond will be with us tomorrow, and we can't wait to have her as well. The next announcement is that this series of trainings will be going on to the end of 2021. And once again, as Professor Healy highlighted on Monday, we look forward to training 50,000 academics on the continent. And so we are encouraging all of us, let's share the good news with our staff. If you have any colleague who needs some of these trainings, just recommend it to him or her. It's free, let the person attend. And I think that will be the only strategic way to make sure that we're able to transform higher education in Africa. Let me say one of the strategic ways. The next is that we are bringing you university pedagogical training. We have heard the recommendations that you made, and Professor Healy has also put together another insightful training content called University Pedagogy Training. We understand that not all of us who teach in the universities may have academic or may have a professional certificate in teaching, and so we are putting together pedagogical training that seeks to train academics who may not have education background, who are teaching in the university. So if you are one of such, or you have colleagues who you think would need some training in that area also, from the 12th to 16th of April, right after the Easter break 2021, we'll be having Professor Pai Ubanya leading us in that front as well. And it's free again. We'll be sharing the notices and all the information with you as well. The next is institutional training. This training is a bit general to all universities on the continent, but if you want us to have a particular session for your university staff, all you need to do is to write to the Secretary General of AAU. His email address is secgen, SECGEN@aau.org. I'm sure my colleagues will put that in the chat for you to see. Just write to him and say, Prof, I'm from University ABC, would want to have a similar training or even much more content. You can suggest some of the content areas. We have a pool of over 1,000 excellent facilitators on the continent who will draw from based on your training need to bring you excellent facilitation. Lastly, my colleague Irene has put the payment modalities onto the platform. If you want to be certified at the end of this training, we have put in the link where you can register, and then also the payment modalities. It is 35 USD, and for those of us in Ghana, Nigeria, we have the mobile money platforms and others that will facilitate the payment as well. And you will receive the certificate from AAU as well. Thank you very much, Mrs. Kwabeji. If I have left anything, any of my colleagues can add up. But I appreciate your time and then also your resources. Thank you.
Okay, that will be all, Kwesi. Thank you so much. I think you have given all the announcements, and we are actually looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day. Over the week, we've had over 100 people participating, and we know that tomorrow we are going to have that number as well, almost getting to 200. So thank you all so much, and we wish you a good day and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye from us here at the Association of African Universities. Thank you.